Welcome, everybody. This is the first of our new research schedule iteration. So why sticky notes? So the contents, this is going to be going over what are sticky notes, why sticky notes, and how are sticky notes designed for ideas. So first, what are sticky notes? So this isn't an official definition, but this is one I really enjoyed. So a sticky note is a small rectangular piece of paper that we can stick on a wall and move around. It has three key characteristics: color, size, and stickiness. Breaking it down into these three parts is really why I put it here. I think this is a great definition. Color, size, and stickiness. It's a tool so simple. It has so much flexibility. There are very few limits on what you can do with this type of note. So I have some thoughts over here roughly on some use cases. You can see sticky notes have a lot to do with information. Organizing, visualizing, gathering, or processing information are some ideas I put here. So the story behind sticky notes and how they came about, actually a chemist, Dr. Spencer Silver, working at 3M, invented the adhesive that's on the back, the sticky part of the sticky note, in 1968, and was not able to find a use for it for 6 years. They called it the solution without a problem. And so they advertised this solution without a problem for something like 6 years until another 3M employee, Arthur Fry, he came along and applied the adhesive to small pieces of paper in order to use them as bookmarks. So Arthur Fry had a problem without a solution in that he would try to track things in books. He would put down a piece of paper, perhaps right next to the word he wanted or something, and then he would close the book. And then when you open it again, he would notice the bookmark will have slid down the page. So he wanted this to be a bookmark that would stay in place without using tape, so you wouldn't tear the page and tear the text. So then a year later in 75, the bookmark runs on a test run just to stores in 4 cities. And it doesn't do too well. People aren't really interested in a sticky bookmark, actually, as it turns out. Not a lot of people cared for it. So it went a few years between iterations and testing. And during this time, from 1975 to 79, Arthur Fry starts taking these bookmarks, and he finds himself using them just to leave notes all over the place. And he starts writing notes specifically to his boss. He finds them really useful for productivity. And so Fry tests them as notes and iterates them a few times. And then 3M releases their first batch of what they call Post-its from Cynthiana, Kentucky, where 3M is based, in 1979. So that was their first batch. And then I don't have the date here, but April 6th, 1980 is actually the first day that Post-its were available nationwide in the US. And it wasn't until I think 1990 that Post-its patent expired with the US. And so a lot of other companies started making Post-it notes. So now we're moving on, asking why the sticky notes. Sticky notes have 2 primary functions. They capture new information very quickly, and then they help you make sense of that information. So when we're talking about capturing new information quickly, these are things like very quick ideas, quick thoughts, reminders, things that you wouldn't open an entire notebook page for. So it allows you to track information that maybe you didn't even track before. So now you're tracking new things, and you're also tracking them very quickly. You don't have a lot of space on a sticky note. So it forces you to think differently as well. So not only are you getting a new way to, it's not just a piece of paper with tape on the back, it's actually a new way of thinking. This is forcing you to think briefly. It's how do you condense all of your information and remove all of the stuff you don't need? I just want the raw data, the raw material. This is why you have sticky notes. It takes away all of that extraneous information and leaves you with very clear, very dense pieces of raw information. So you can capture that very quickly, and then you can make sense of it. So we have different colors, you have different sizes, different shapes. And these can all index and categorize the information in different ways. We can label them in lots of different ways like this. So we're going to go into these two a bit more. So capture new information quickly. So humans are visual thinkers. Some people more than others, but in general, all humans are visual thinkers. About 90% of information transmitted to the brain is visual, which is kind of surprising. There's a lot of other ways the brain takes in information, but just the sheer amount of visual data out there is why this is such a high percentage. The amount of data you receive just in a glance around your room is absurd. The brain can process visual images in as little as 13 milliseconds. So this is actually a test through MIT here. All of these are through that source. And so the brain can process images about 60,000 times faster than it can text. So this is why you want new information to be visual, to be short, to be dense, to be understood and captured quickly. So to make sense of information. So notes facilitate collaboration. They build shared understandings between people across functions, developers, designers, anybody, any pairing of functions you can think of. This type of new thinking, this short, dense, raw data thinking that can be reorganized, categorized, and adapted will help people share and see each other's ideas visually. And also, you can also reorganize ideas spatially. So these sticky notes allow you to create a spatial relationship with your words. So I can write down some words on different notes, and then I can put one here and one over here, and then I can move them, and their location means something in itself. Not just the words on the notes, but the location of the notes actually now has meaning. This is something you can't do very easily with notebook paper. So this spatial relationship with information is also something new to sticky notes. So then lastly, how are sticky notes designed for ideas? What can you do with sticky notes? So apart from just writing ideas on them, we have people building QR codes, recreating the Mona Lisa. We have flipbook art. This person here is even taken to using it as a coaster to save their desk. So there are a lot of things you can do with sticky notes. And these are physical, but we can also look at digital. These are all BoardX. These are all in-house ideas. These checker pieces are sticky notes. The boards are sticky notes. And you can see here sort of a lot of what I was talking about. We can see the different colors of the notes. So we have the wording on the notes. We have the sentence, that piece of information. We have the color of the notes, in this case, denoting their authors. So we know just by looking at them who wrote it. So we have the information, who wrote it. Now we can see that they're in these 4 groups. These are spatial relationships. So just by looking at this note and seeing that it's in this group, I now have an entire different set of information, contextual information. So I have the note info itself, who wrote it, contextual information, and then these other sticky notes here are acting as dots for dot voting. So these are sticky notes that also denote a 4th type of information, a new way of interacting with these other few pieces of information we've already put out. So sticky notes are ridiculously adaptable, super flexible. So these are how sticky notes are designed for ideas, and just a few examples. Obviously, there's countless more. So these are just a few. So this is the story that I've built. And there's also more to explore. So part of this research shareback is that we want it to be collaborative, cooperative. So if any of this has struck anybody, if anybody is particularly interested in sticky notes, I've just thrown a few ideas here, but we could really add anything. The relationship between notes and ideas, the intersection of notes and innovation, physical or digital notes, pros and cons, comparing them. So these are a few different routes that could be explored further. So that's the sticky note story. But I also want to share with you how I put together this story and how I did my research, what my process was. Um, so this is the whole board. I've titled it One Board for Sticky Notes. So the goal here is that anybody in the future, anybody can open this board and see all that they want to know about sticky notes. Theoretically, we should cover as much as possible here. I'll do my process chronologically as I created it. So I just created a new board. I put my title here, and then what I did is I immediately brainstormed. So I just what were my first thoughts, the first things that I wanted to cover, and then I also built a who, what, when, where, why structure. These are the 5 W's, some people call them. So this helped me figure out who are the inventors, who are the major players. I didn't mention Alan in the story down here. There's actually sort of a scandal around sticky notes. Alan Amron, he claims to have invented them in 1973, 1 year before Arthur Fry presented this idea. So he claims and actually has made multiple lawsuits against 3M over this. As it turns out, it wasn't until 2016 that somebody who worked in 3M admitted openly that Alan did actually present the idea to 3M a full year before Arthur Fry did. And it was a different sort of, it's not exactly the Post-it note, but it's similar enough that you might claim Alan is the inventor of the sticky note. So that's really up for interpretation. Even the US courts didn't want to settle that. So I'm not sure who is the true inventor, but that's just a fun fact about sticky notes. So I collected some brand information here and researched 3M a bit. I have the what and my definition I found that I liked and the source for that. The when, where, and then the why is where it really gets interesting. This I didn't find a place for. This is kind of interesting too. So why yellow, that iconic Post-it yellow? It's actually called canary yellow. So that canary yellow, it just by total coincidence happened to be the color of scrap paper that they had available when they were building the prototypes. So that yellow, that iconic sticky note yellow, is just a total coincidence and accident. It wasn't a design choice at all. Although interestingly, from a psychological standpoint, yellow is the most noticeable color. It's the color that draws our attention, draws our eyes. This is why school buses are yellow. You'll recognize all of these images I used, and I included this link to a YouTube video of this video right here, actually, 25 ways to use sticky notes. And then I've also included here a bit of a graph on, or an infographic on physical versus digital. So they both vary in size, shape, and color. The digital doesn't have the same sort of stickiness in that way. The digital are easily saved and easily shared. Physical aren't. You can't save all of the notes after a session. You do a very valuable 3-hour, 4-hour workshop with a small group, maybe 5 or 6 members of your team or something. And then people leave that room and you have hundreds of notes on the wall. People feel it was a very productive session. They got so much insight from all of this work. And then they leave that room. They all take pictures on the phone of the walls of sticky notes, and then they leave. Now, how do I share that feeling of gusto, of we had so much insight, there's so much incredible stuff to share? How do I share that feeling through a picture of a wall filled with other notes? That's very difficult. You can't share the actual space where it happened if it's a physical space. Now, in a digital setting, it's totally different. We can actually show you exactly where it happened and how it happened, and actually it's still happening right now, and you can join. Physical produces waste, obviously requires physical space, and then the digital can be edited at any point, resized, made new shapes. There's infinite collaboration space, and you can collaborate from anywhere. So those are just a few quick thoughts. That's not so much research as so much as another form of brainstorming. And then I also covered, this is a work in progress. I wanted to demonstrate too that it's okay to share incomplete research, because I feel research is never really complete. This was here just supposed to be a visual demonstration of how notes and ideas are related. So they're both sort of temporary, quick flashes of information, like an idea or a thought is really just a flash of information in your brain. And they come in all sorts of shapes, sizes, and colors, and you can connect these flashes of information to create more complex information. And that's really the story behind the story of sticky notes. Like you can see here, all of my research is done. These are all sticky notes. My infographic is even built entirely of sticky notes. My other infographic is sticky notes. I have sticky notes explaining the pictures of sticky notes. And then I have my presentation packed with sticky notes. So they're extremely useful. Obviously, I'm pretty biased. I chose this topic, but I find them very useful. I think it's also really interesting that it forces us to think differently. It's not just a way to store a few grocery list items like eggs and milk. It's a new way of thinking. It's a new way of living.